On the 25th of November, 2022, the silence of Riverside, California was shattered by an unnerving call for help. A concerned neighbor had observed a frantic 15-year-old girl, a face filled with anguish, being led away by an ominous figure dressed in a trench coat and wearing a mask. A man who seemed far too old to be her companion. This mysterious stranger had parked his car in the family's driveway before entering the girl's home when the pair emerged. The girl was disheveled and visibly distraught. She made eye contact with her neighbor, looking as if pleading for help, and her lips mouthing desperate silent cries as she was or should into the car. As they pulled away, the neighbor wrote down the license plate number and the vehicle's description, only to notice that the girl's home had been set. Ablaze, the fire department responding to the inferno unknowingly stepped into a scene of horror. Upon entry, they were greeted by the lifeless bodies of free adults bound and gagged. The chilling events had only just begun before we start. If you find this video fascinating, then at the end, please drop it a like and let me know what you thought about the case. It helps the channel. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Thank you. This is samtv, featuring Pedophile Officer. The license plate belonged to a man named Austin Lee Edwards, who was 28 years old. Here is a little bit about Austin's background. He grew up in Richlands, Virginia, attending high school, followed by jobs at Walmart and Lowe's. He told his friends of his determination to work hard and lift his family out of poverty. A few years later, in 2017, Austin decided to further his education at Southwest Virginia Community College. Despite not receiving any degrees or certifications, he embraced his passion for Comic-Con events and video games. Surprisingly, Austin had also worked as a trooper for the Virginia State Police in Henrico County. He began attending the academy in July 2021, and by January 2022, he had successfully completed his training. When someone becomes a police officer, a thorough background check is conducted, and Austin appeared to pass all necessary evaluations without any issues. Nonetheless, on October 28, 2022, Austin decided to resign from the Virginia State Police shortly after he secured a new position at the sheriff's office. Within just 3 weeks of starting his new job, he was assigned to patrol duty in Washington County, Virginia, where he continued to demonstrate his dedication and hard work. Austin appeared to be exploring various roles within the force, trying to find his way. During this period, the 28-year-old deputy state trooper began speaking to a 15-year-old girl who shall remain anonymous. She was online thousands of miles away from where he was living and working in Washington County. He was posing as a 17-year-old boy. It is not clear what photos he used to portray his lie, but it very well could have been an up. But the 15-year-old Californian girl was excited. She thought she was talking to somebody around her age, a little bit older. And is nothing strange about this, as all kids communicate this way. The relationship between the two had been consisting of exchanging phone calls, text messages, and online gaming. Austin's friends had stated that they knew he had an online girlfriend that was a few years longer than him. They would play Minecraft together. But at no point did they realize how young she was. During this time, Austin gained the girl's trust, and he was able to get her personal information, including where she lived. The conversations took a turn when she was asked to send him explicit photos. That is when she stopped communicating with him. And this is where the problems began. Although limited information is available about their relationship before the incident, we can gain some insight by examining one of Austin's previous relationships. Following his arrest, a 21-year-old woman recognized his image in the media and decided to share her story. She mentioned feeling sick upon seeing his face, as she hadn't seen him in years. In October 2014, they met on the website Omegle, a video chatting platform that connects users randomly. At the time, she was 13 years old, and he was 20. They subsequently exchanged Skype handles and began communicating off the app. The very next day, their conversations quickly took a deviant turn, with Austin demanding explicit photos of her. The woman had nearly 4,000 messages revealing that Austin consistently pressured her into sharing nude photos. Even after learning her age, she eventually gave in to his demands. She also stated that Austin engaged in explicit acts on camera, and he pushed her to undress, although she never complied to this. Additionally, she reported that he would use derogatory terms towards minority groups. In one message, Austin clearly acknowledged the girl's age, as the following exchange shows. "Did I tell you I went trick-or-treating?" Austin wrote on November 6, 2014. "I totally did, I'm 20. "Me too," the girl wrote back, "I'm 13. Over the years they conversed, Austin referred to a teenager as his girlfriend and routinely demanded nude photographs. Threatening violence issue confused. This behavior led her to believe he was unstable. She also mentioned that during calls he would display his knife and hatchet collection. One of these hatchets he would later use on the night of February 6, 2016. On this night, Austin watched the Super Bowl with his father Christopher. Each of them reportedly drank about 2 beers that night. Later, as they slept, Christopher was awakened by strange noises coming from the bathroom, where he discovered Austin had locked himself inside. Austin was actually on the phone to the young girl, showing her what he had done to himself. But after Christopher had pried the door open with a screwdriver, Austin put the phone down and his father seen a large cut on his hand. Christopher immediately called 911 for assistance whilst Austin ran to his bedroom after realizing his father had called for help. Austin tried to leave the house, but Christopher stopped him in the kitchen. The emergency services arrived to find Christopher holding Austin down. They initially thought it was a medical incident, but they were so disturbed by Austin's behavior that they called the police, who arrived at 3:30 a.m. Officers found a significant amount of blood in the house, and Austin was resisting both his father and the medics. He screamed and threatened everyone. An officer pulled out his taser and demanded to see Austin's hands, but Austin just dared him to do it. Christopher was eventually able to subdue his son, allowing the officers to handcuff him and take him to the hospital where his hand injury was treated. While most people would have come to their senses in the hospital, Austin threatened to kill his father once he was released from the handcuffs. Christopher, who had bite marks on his arms, refused medical treatment. Authorities subsequently sectioned Austin, which gave him a forced time to recover. It was later deemed that Austin posed a substantial risk to himself, all of us, and was incapable of protecting himself or meeting his basic needs. Christopher believed that Austin's violent outburst resulted from relationship issues, suspecting that his son and his girlfriend had recently broken up. He wasn't sectioned for so long and was soon released, and he was messaging the girl again, stating, "I'm trained to know what these people want to hear, so I can get out of those places pretty easily. I just tell them why. I know they want to hear." The underage girl believes that she was the girlfriend that the future offender's father mentioned. According to her, Austin often shared his thoughts about harming himself with her, telling only person he had and threatening to end himself if she ended their communication. At one point, he even told her she was his sole reason for living. Edwards also encouraged the young girl to be violent towards her own family in 2015 when she told him she couldn't Skype because her mother was home. He responded with, "Kill her," and threatened to give himself a black eye if she did not comply. After 2 years of messaging and several attempts to break up, the then 15-year-old girl decided to block Austin. However, he continued to message her on different Facebook accounts despite her never sharing her real name with him. The woman expressed that she wasn't surprised at all by Austin's violent acts against the girl and her family, as she knew how frightening he could be. She found it hard to believe that someone with such apparent mental health issues could become a police officer. She couldn't understand how he managed to pass all the necessary screenings, given the severity of the problems she witnessed during their conversations. Both the Virginia State Police and the Washington County Sheriff's Office has said that none of his prior employers said that they had any sorts of issues with him. They also said that his background check, fingerprinting, and psychological tests all came back fine. They had no reason to believe that he was a hand to himself or anybody else. Others who are familiar with how the background check system works said that they believe that human error is to blame for Austin being able to get these jobs. They said that the person or people doing these checks may have forgotten something in the management system or failed to reach out to the proper agencies for a record check. I wanted to tell you about this previous interaction with young girl to let you understand what may have been going on in this murder case. Most likely lots of deviant manipulation. Austin, a 28-year-old officer, kept telling the 15-year-old girl that he would buy a house and that they would live happily ever after. Although the girl agreed, she probably didn't take it seriously, as she thought she was talking to a boy roughly her age who was across the other side of the country. Nevertheless, on November 14th, less than 2 weeks before the incident, Austin purchased a home in the small rural town of Saltville, Virginia. For $79,000, the house had 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and he said he bought it to be closer to friends and family. The seller found it odd that Austin specifically requested a video of the home's basement. He wasn't interested in the street or the rest of the house, he just wanted to know what the basement was like. That's pretty creepy. But the seller complied, and the sale was quickly completed. And when Austin moved in, his odd behavior continued. He immediately blacked out all the windows in the house with window tint and blackout curtains, ensuring that nobody could see inside. The house was also obscured from the main road by another home, providing additional privacy. A friend of Austin's revealed that he had been discussing plans for the girl to move in with him on the phone. While friends noted that Austin had always valued his privacy, his recent actions seemed unusual. However, one neighbor who spoke to Austin found him quite normal and even felt reassured to have a police officer in the neighborhood, considering his wife and young child were often home alone. These kind of reactions show that people are not instantly put off by Austin, and this is what's alarming, as he can be doing such odd things like blacking out his house, and yet some people are still not alarmed. As I mentioned earlier, Austin had the girl's address. Maybe it was a lesson learned from not having the previous girl's real information. The girl lived in the house with her grandparents. 69-year-old Mark Wynick, who, having spent years as a beloved soccer, baseball, and softball coach, had a reputation for being helpful and humble. His selflessness extended beyond his professional life, as he was known in the neighborhood for helping those in need. His wife, 65-year-old Sherry Wynick, was known as a warm and nurturing figure. Her love for baking and spending quality time with her family, particularly during the festive season, spoke volumes about her caring nature. Her passion for family was mirrored in her daughter, 38-year-old Brooke, who also lived at the house. She was a dedicated single mother to her teenage daughter. One thing about this family is clear to me: it was extremely tight-knit. It seems that the relationship between the young girl and Austin took a drastic turn when he asked her to send him explicit photos of herself. When she refused and ceased communication, he reacted in an extreme and violent manner similar to his behavior in 2016, unable to accept the end of their online relationship. Austin embarked on a 600-mile journey, roughly 40 hours. Austin's reaction was extreme and alarming. His decision to drive such a long distance from Virginia to California demonstrates a level of obsession and determination, along with a complete disregard for boundaries and the law. It is deeply unsettling, but chillingly. Up to 2 weeks before the attack even took place, there have been sightings of Austin's car in the neighborhood. This is a tight community. So when an unknown car pulls up, it's no test. And when it's there multiple times, it's not forgotten. This would suggest that he was staking out the area before he made his move. It seems like the family had a tip. Typical. Happy Thanksgiving. Unaware of the looming danger, the girl's Aunt Michelle came round with her husband. They made brownies together. She said, "If the brownies my mom made should be frosted with sprinkles or just left plain, it seemed silly at the time. But that's a conversation and a debate that will forever resonate in my heart." Little did I know on that day that would be the last time that my husband and I would see my parents and my sister again. The next day, while we were out buying Christmas lights for our home, I received a phone call from my parents' neighbor of 22 years. They were best friends. They looked out for each other. She called to tell us that we needed to get there as soon as we could, because my parents' house was on fire. This is the home that my sister and I grew up in. Since we were little, I couldn't get there fast enough. We left everything in the shopping cart at the store and took off. Another neighbor would later recount speaking to Austin just before the murders took place. Austin had parked his car in front of the neighbor's driveway and was watching the Wynick's house, alarmed. The neighbor came out and told Austin that he cannot park there. Austin apologized and moved his car onto the Wynick's property. Austin disguised himself with a mask and trench coat, then infiltrated the property. He proceeded to bind and gag Mark, Sherry, and Brooke before taking their lives. The exact details of this horrific act have not been disclosed, but the brutal manner in which he restrained them suggests a level of cruelty that is deeply unsettling. A neighbor who initially noticed the unfamiliar car later observed the 15-year-old girl heading towards the car, appearing as if she was on the brink of tears. The girl was barefoot and punchless. The neighbor recalled making eye contact with her, sensing a plea for help, but no words were spoken promptly. The neighbor called the police. Austin noticed in the neighbor's concern, sped away with the young girl. Soon after, the police arrived to find the house ablaze, unable to act until the fire department arrived. They could only watch as the house was consumed by flames. Once the fire was extinguished, a gruesome discovery was made. The bodies of the other Free family members. The police immediately issued a dispatch to be on the lookout for Austin's car. 3 hours later, Austin was located driving with the girl in the car. A police chase ensued, but law enforcement officers eventually managed to get him to pull over, and he was quickly surrounded. The terrified girl managed to escape from the car, running out crying and screaming while a gunfight broke out. Austin used his service weapon to fire at the officers before ultimately turning the gun on himself. The 15-year-old girl was taken into custody, deeply traumatized. She was cared for by specialists. She had lost her mother and her grandparents, all because she believed she was engaging in innocent online flirtation with a boy her age. The girls aren't. Michelle later made a heartfelt statement. "Catfishing led to the deaths of the 3 most important people in my life. My dad, my mom, and my sister. This started as an inappropriate online romance between a predator and a child." She continued, "This was an adult who traveled across the country to kidnap a 15-year-old girl. my niece, our family member, with the intention of kidnapping her, and in the process killed and devastated our family. He took an oath to protect, and he failed to do so. In a tragic irony, Austin Edwards should have embodied safety and protection as a state trooper. He was supposed to uphold the law, maintain peace, and safeguard the innocent. Instead, he turned into the very danger he was sworn to protect against.